Yes, it's the Matchbook Weekend Football Podcast. I'm your returning host, Ali Maxwell. And with me, football broadcaster and former professional Adrian Clarke. Adrian, with Champions League, with EFL action, this has been a busy week, but plenty to look forward to this weekend.
Big time, yeah. Really looking forward to the weekend. Yeah, it's been an action-packed week. I've been here, there and everywhere following the football. But some good, tasty-looking matches to look ahead to today.
And Mark O'Hare joins us as well. Mark, I think I can say a friend of yours now, I do have some concern for your health at the moment. Matchbook using you for rugby as well as football, Champions League, and the Weekend Football Podcast as well. But hopefully you've been able to take some time to find some value this weekend.
Yeah, it's been a busy time, Ali, but busy's always good, so I can't complain, especially when there's top-class rugby, Champions League football, and a full card from the Football League to enjoy this midweek. It's been busy, but busy's good.
Absolutely. Well, let me tell you, listeners, that it's good news. And on the Matchbook site, I would say the only thing that's been missing is the ability to put together multiples, Accas. And Matchbook have sorted that now. Acca's now available on the Matchbook site. Up until now, only single bets, but that's all changed. So if you like what you hear from the guys today, any of the selections from the podcast, you can add them up with some of your own fancies. You can bundle them together and play a multiple on the Matchbook website. So if you head onto the site now, matchbook.com, you'll see how to do it, where to do it, and get involved this weekend. We're going to start our rundown of the weekend action at Anfield, Liverpool against Tottenham. This one's on Sunday afternoon, and Liverpool are the favourites at home. No surprise there. 1.53 the price. Spurs 6.7 away from home. The draw 4.6. All these prices available as we record on the Matchbook site, but subject to change, of course, over the next few days. On the Asian handicap, we're offering Liverpool minus 1.25 at 2.2 and Spurs plus 1.25 at 1.8. The goal line set at 3 goals. Over 3, 1.85, under 2.05. I'm going to start with you, Mark, here. Of course, last weekend, Liverpool's winning streak ended, but they're still 6 points clear of Man City at the top of the table. Spurs haven't won an away game since the 20th of January. How do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to be with Liverpool, really. They weren't great last weekend at Old Trafford. Still earned a point. Probably could have had more if Mo Salah had been fit. I think criticism was probably a little bit overblown for that performance, considering it was one of their toughest away games of the season, coming straight off an international break as well. But I guess those are the standards that they've set themselves. Now just one Premier League loss in 48, 39 of those are victories. At Anfield, unbeaten in 44, winning 34 times as well. Since Sam Allardyce Crystal Palace team actually won at Anfield, unbelievably. But it's 11 wins on the spin at Anfield, scored twice or more in all those 11 games too. So that dominance is definitely reflected in those pre-match prices. But I was interested to see what the prices were last season when Spurs went to Anfield in a much better shape. Spurs were 5-1, 6.00 on decimals. So there's been a slight drift there. But Liverpool were only 1.58. They went off 1.58 at Anfield for this match. Now, there's only a fraction shorter than that this weekend. So, what you can read into that, I don't know. But more interestingly for me, really, was Liverpool actually went off at 1.59 here against Leicester just 3 weeks ago. So, the market's essentially saying that Spurs aren't too much better than Leicester. They're almost rated around the same level, which is quite surprising, really. Liverpool obviously have the upper hand in head-to-heads, 8 wins in the last 13 against Spurs. Just the one defeat as well. But as you say, Spurs, it's very hard to trust them at the moment, considering what we've seen, the evidence we've had at hand. 4 wins from 13 across all competitions. One of those was Wednesday night against Red Star, which they should really be beating quite comfortably. And you mentioned that away record as well. It's 8 defeats and 10 in the Premier League away from home. And across all competitions, just 2 wins, 10 defeats and 5 draws since mid-January. So, a lot of sort of backslapping went on after the midweek win against Red Star, which really should be a bit of a loosener. Obviously, got an extra day's rest over Liverpool as well, and had the comfort of playing at home. But I don't think that should mask what we saw last weekend. And again, there's the allowance of playing after the international break. But there's a bit of a no-show against Watford at home. Didn't deserve anything more than a point in that match. And the underlying data across the whole season is putting Spurs right down in mid-table. They're returning negative supremacy figures for XG open play, shots in the box. I think that's quite concerning. And obviously that's why question marks are beginning to fester about Pochettino and the team and where they are in a mental state since the Champions League. But their record away at Big Six teams under Pochettino, as we've spoken about many times, is very poor. 7 defeats from 12 now since the start of 2017-18. And you just look at Liverpool as well as Man City and you think these two are streets ahead of the rest at the moment. Liverpool unbeaten in the last 11 when hosting Big Six teams. I suspect they'll overwhelm Spurs and get a couple of goals and see the game out. But I certainly wouldn't sort of discount Spurs from making a bit of a game of this. Obviously, the attacking talent they have at their disposal, as we've mentioned with Man United last weekend, they have the ability to turn it on in big games under the lights on a Super Sunday. And Liverpool as well, just from a defensive aspect, just the 2 clean sheets in Europe in the Premier League this year. Even Genk caused them plenty of problems in midweek too. So there's still a few niggling doubts there. There's still definitely weaknesses in that Liverpool team. It's just whether Spurs have the composure to really sort of take the game to them and pick up a positive result. I wouldn't put anyone off backing Spurs plus that 1.25. I think that's probably fair enough. But I actually think the prices and the markets are pretty much bang on here. There's not a huge amount I can glean from it. So if I was having a bet on this match, it'd be Liverpool to win and over 2.5 goals, which will get around the even money mark.
Adrian, from I suppose, more of a tactical perspective, obviously Liverpool did get the equaliser against United last weekend, but certainly a surprise that United were able to restrict them so effectively, certainly in the first 45, maybe 60 minutes of that game. Is there maybe a blueprint at all, do you think, developing where teams can say, here's how we can try to restrict this excellent Liverpool side? How do you see this game playing out? Do you think Spurs will just desperately look for a 0-0 draw? Or do you see this playing out a little differently?
I don't think Spurs can play for a 0-0 draw, that's for sure. Not with their defence in its current state. It's a bit shot to pieces, if I'm being perfectly honest, in terms of the form of Vertonghen and Alderweireld. They're looking leggy, they're looking their age, aren't they? And in the full-back areas as well, the form isn't great. I think we can discount a comfortable win against Red Star, who didn't offer a lot at the other end of the pitch. Don't think that offers them offers us much of a gauge ahead of the test against Liverpool. I'm glad you asked me about the tactics, because I liked Liverpool's performance, Manchester United's performance rather, with the twin strikers splitting Daniel James and Marcus Rashford. And when you think about Spurs, that's what they do 9 times out of 10 with Harry Kane and Heung-min Son. So from that point of view, I expect Pochettino to go with the front 2. And what happened at Old Trafford was that it impacted on the fullbacks, especially in the first half. I didn't think that Alexander-Arnold or Robertson were quite sure when to go forward and when to stay put. They were reticent to take as many chances. They didn't play with as much confidence as they usually do. And that manifested itself in a strange Liverpool performance. I think this time around they'll be better. What I think that the takeaway from the last week for Liverpool is the impact of the fringe players. We saw the Ox in midweek in the Champions League shine. We see Keita and Lallana come on and look good, particularly Lallana with the impact he made. So all of a sudden there's a bit of competition for places in the Liverpool starting 11. That comfortableness that they were feeling, I think, might have dissipated. So I'm expecting Liverpool to improve. I think they'll have too much for Tottenham. One interesting point is that in every game at Anfield so far this season in the Premier League, both teams have scored. So you would imagine Spurs might nick one, but for me, I'm with Mark on this one. Liverpool to win, both teams to score, probably over 3.5 goals, given how porous Tottenham have been.
Okay, so Liverpool and goals seems to be the view there in that game on Sunday afternoon. We've also got Arsenal and Crystal Palace going head-to-head at the same time. Arsenal, the home team, available at 1.49 on the Matchbook site as we record. Crystal Palace 6.8 and the draw 4.8. Arsenal minus 1.25 goals, available at 2.04. And Crystal Palace with 1.25, 1.89. Over 3 goals, 1.84. And the under 2.07. Adrian, generally, Arsenal do win these games at home against non-Big Six teams. The defeat to Sheffield United, of course, fresh in the memory, away from home. But last year against the other 14, 11 wins, 2 draws and 1 defeat at home. But that defeat was at the hands of Crystal Palace, who left with a 3-2 win. Palace, confusingly, have picked up 14 points this season while only scoring 8 goals in the league, which is remarkable. Very efficient. Is it sustainable? Can they continue their good form at the Emirates?
Well, it's sustainable in this game. Over the course of the season, I'm not so sure. Yeah, it was 3-2 to the Eagles. Really costly defeat for Arsenal at the back end of last season. It's probably the loss that cost them a place in the Champions League. So that will be on the minds of the players. And most importantly, it's going to be on the mind of Unai Emery, who, let's be honest, is a defensive coach. I think he's very cautious by nature, and he gives a lot of credit, I think, to opposition sides and factors his own approach around them. So I expect him to be very, not defensive because they're at home, but I don't think he's going to play an open strategy in this contest because of what happened on the counter-attack in this fixture back in April. So don't expect Arsenal to throw the kitchen sink at Palace, especially in the first half. I think wait for the team selection, wait for the team news in this game, because Arsenal fans are crying out for Lacazette to start, for Torreira to start, for Holding to come back into the defence, and for Tierney and Bellerin to come in at fullback. They're all fit. They're all ready, in my opinion, to play. But he's a cautious guy, and he has been reluctant to put them in. If he puts them in, I'm telling you now, it lifts the crowd, and I think it lifts the energy of the performance. If he goes with the same sort of 11 he picked at Sheffield United, this could be a really tight, edgy affair. I'm looking at this game. I'm not going against Arsenal. I think they'll win. I think it might be a low-scoring affair. Based on recent history, based on Emery's mood, Arsenal to win, but maybe under 2.5 goals here.
Mark O'Hare, what have you flagged up here? What are the numbers saying about this game?
Yeah, I'd follow similar lines there to what Adrian's saying. I've sent out a kind of few warning signs last week about Arsenal going away to Sheffield United at a short price. Wasn't at all surprised to see them flop. Probably a little bit surprised at how bad they actually were. But they're a team that you can normally trust, especially at home to bottom half teams. They're quite predictable in that sort of sense. And this match is kind of right up their street in that kind of, they're consistent, very efficient at putting these teams away. Have got the added distraction of playing Guimaraes on Thursday night in the Europa League, but Emery will rest and rotate his squad, and quite the same as Adrian. I'm just waiting for them to bring in Tierney, Bellerin, Holding, especially to kind of add a bit more quality to that defence, because they're noted that there will be upgrades on the current options. So I think the sooner he does, the better. But I can't really argue with the price on Arsenal. I think it's fair enough. Palace have this reputation as being an awkward team for Big Six teams to play against, very well organised. Quite limited, but the reputation as being sort of tricky customers, I think, is a little bit overblown. They obviously like to play on the counter-attack, sit deep, frustrate teams, but they've actually lost 17 of 23 games against the Big Six under Roy. Only 8 of those are actually by 2 or more goals, though. Surprisingly, both teams to score and overs have been hitting around 60% in those matches as well. So, goals aren't, they're actually quite prevalent in Palace games against the Big Six, but there's nothing really there for me with a flat 3 line for the goals market. So for me, it's all about kind of getting with Palace in some sort of sense on the handicap. I think if you get 1.25 start, then you're in a decent position. Really, it's paid out in or made profit at least in 15 of those 23 games against the Big Six teams under Roy. If you look at Arsenal, as I say, they are normally consistent. They do normally get the job done in these sort of situations. Maybe look to them to win by a 1-goal margin, maybe. They've only lost twice this season, but they are returning negative supremacy figures like Spurs across all the major data metrics, yet to win by 2 or more goals this season. And if you look at their home games in isolation, now we know they're quite small samples, just the 3 matches here, but made very hard work of it against Burnley, very hard work of it against Villa and Bournemouth too. So if those 3 teams can turn up to the Emirates and put on a decent show and keep Arsenal competitive, then why not Palace as well? So I think Palace with 1.25 goal start on the Asian handicap, around about 1.9, I think that's fair enough.
Ali, can I for the punters who like a little bit of quirkiness, but they like to look at the history books, there's a couple of interesting stats that I've spotted. Arsenal have never failed to score in this fixture in the top flight. Home to Palace, it's happened 19 times. They've scored every single time. So that's one to consider. And this is my favourite. They love October. They love October in North London. You have to go back to 2002 2002. Now you were in short trousers, I'd imagine then, Ali. Goodness me! Since the last time they lost at home in October in the Premier League. So there you go. I'm not expecting an upset.
That's remarkable. So they've never lost at the Emirates at home in October.
Yeah, or a hybrid previously. Yeah. So,
okay.
But yeah, you're right about the Emirates. Yeah.
Doing my job for me there. Thank you, Adrian. We're going to move on to Norwich against Manchester United. It's a fascinating game, this one. It really is. Norwich, the home team, are 4.35 on the Matchbook site. As we record, Manchester United 1.84 and the draw at 4.0, 3-1. Norwich with 3/4 of a goal head start, 1.86, and Manchester United minus 0.75, 2.07. The over 2.75 goal line is available at 1.89 and the under at 2.02. There's interest here, for me anyway, in both teams. So I'd like to hear from both of you about this. Starting with you, Mark. We've got a Norwich team that had some real highs and lows already in this return to the Premier League. And actually last weekend, getting a 0-0 draw, their first clean sheet away at Bournemouth. Really one of the sort of least lively matches they've had so far. So ravaged by injury thus far. And the United team that, they're still very much in the bottom half, 14th place with 10 points from 9 games. I'd be interested to know how you see this one playing out.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, Ali. United, as we've already sort of touched on, won plenty of praise for their performance against Liverpool. You could say it was fair and deserved, centred around that sort of switch to a 3-man backline to combat Liverpool. But, all the praise towards United's defence. Defence hasn't been the issue this season. Their defensive process has been one of the best in the Premier League. It's in attack where they've been absolutely hopeless. Mentioned so many times now that only Newcastle are generating fewer open play chances than United, and they actually rank 4th bottom in the Premier League for expected goals from open play ratio. 14 teams have had more shots from inside the penalty area than United as well. And if we're going to stick the boot in anymore, like last weekend, it was their second lowest possession figure at home since 2003-04. They're without Paul Pogba again, probably till the end of the month at least. So I just wonder where they're going to get this quality in opening teams up. So I guess from a bonus or a positive side of things, they are playing a Norwich team that have been very open and so tend to play that way under Daniel Farke. But for me, they're not an odds-on proposition. There's no way I can back them at that price. Winless in 8 away Premier League games, their worst run since 1989. Failed to score 2 or more goals in any of those games. And actually, if you remove penalties from the last 21 games across all competitions, they scored 12 goals, 3 of which came against Chelsea on the opening day when the 4-0 scoreline didn't reflect the pattern of play. So there's a few warning signs there for me for United. For Norwich, you mentioned it there, first clean sheet, first away point as well against Bournemouth. Surprised us anyone, I think, the 0-0 in that match. But Farke was, came out and said he was very relieved and very pleased with his team's performance. They obviously were smashed by Villa before the international break. Quite comfortably beaten by Burnley and Palace before that. He actually tweaked his system for that game against Bournemouth, played 3 central midfielders. He talked about wanting to be a bit more solid, have more control in the centre of the park. And it worked really well for them because they thwarted Bournemouth. They actually maintained their attacking threat as well. They were the better team. Excuse me. And that's despite playing or having 2 central midfielders at centre half for almost half the game in Teti and Amadou because Ben Godfrey went off. Excuse me. But I think that's the issue really for me with Norwich at the moment is the team news. We don't know the team news coming into this weekend. I know that Closer, Zimmerman, Hanley and possibly Godfrey now as well are going to be missing, which means possibly more square holes in round pegs, which is a real shame really because this is a game that they'd be targeting and think they've got a real chance in because they've obviously beaten City here, beat Newcastle very well, gave Chelsea a bit of a test. I don't think it was very straightforward for the Blues that day. And they're creating so many chances going forward. They should really be targeting this game as a match where they can pick up points. I just want to see the team news first because whilst I think there was positive signs last weekend, it's a different kettle of fish playing United at home with 2 central midfielders at centre half if that's the way they have to go. But if I have to have a play right now, it's definitely not United at odds on. I'd be looking at Norwich odds against with a half-goal start.
Okay, Adrian, any strong views on this game? Team news is going to be so important from a Norwich perspective. Either way, it's going to be a cracking atmosphere at Carrow Road.
Definitely, yeah. It's a game you don't want to miss, I think. Yeah, very, very interesting. Obviously, the way they approached it against City was fantastic. Took their chances that day. Norwich, famous victory. What a double it would be if they were to claim United's scalp as well. I was looking at the Times G, the expected goals differential this week, and Norwich are on -6, which indicates that actually their performances are better than their results so far this season. When you consider they score with every effort against Manchester City, I think that shows you across the other games they probably should have picked up more points. So yeah, look, I think they can trouble Manchester United here, but it is the personnel, and hand on heart, even though they got a brave draw, I guess, at Bournemouth, handling Daniel James, the pace of him up top with Rashford, Martial's back fit again now. I don't see them holding out. I really don't. Even though United have not been involved in any high-scoring matches on the road this season, they've all been pretty tight, cagey affairs. So no, I give Norwich a chance of a draw. I don't think they'll beat Manchester United this time. Could be a draw, but I'd side with a narrow, low-scoring, actually, Manchester United victory.
Okay, more or less keeping our powder dry on that game, certainly before we see the team news. Saturday evening in the Premier League, you've got Burnley hosting Chelsea at Turf Moor. Now, as we record on the Matchbook site, Burnley are available at 4.6, Chelsea 1.8, and the draw 4.2. Burnley plus 0.75 goals on the handicap, 1.95, and Chelsea minus 0.75 goals, 1.99. Over 2 3/4 goals, over 2.75, 1.83, and the under 2.75 goals at 2.07. That is rare that something sort of piques my interest as I read the prices out, but in my head, a game at Burnley under the lights, goal expectancy, I would imagine would be quite low, but the under 2.75 available at over even money looks quite tasty to me. Adrian, how do you see this game playing out at Turf Moor?
Yeah, it's another fascinating fixture. History tells you that Chelsea have got a great record at Turf Moor. Burnley have a very poor record, a surprisingly poor record against the Big Six. Very rarely do they beat them. But I'm going to oppose Chelsea here, not because they're not in great form, because we all know that they are. It's because sooner or later there comes a game that just jolts you back to reality. And I think Burnley have the capability to be the team that brings Frank Lampard and his fledglings back down to earth. First up, that game against Ajax last night was energy sapping. That would have taken a lot out of them. They put everything into it. And stylistically, it's almost like a different sport, the match that they're going to face at Burnley. So I think it might be a shock to their system. Looking at Wood up top and thinking this is a guy that's banging form, 4 in 4. He scored, wait for this, he had 4 headers all season long, Chris Wood, and he scored with 3 of them. So sling the ball into the box, Chris Wood tends to score, at least this season anyway. I'm just imagining Chris Wood, we've got Ashley Barnes, of course, in the side as well, peeling onto the likes of Alonso at the fast stick, Aston Liquetta, just doing a little bit of damage there. I think Chelsea do have fragility, and I see the Clarets picking something up. The draw or Burnley here would be my selection. I would be laying Chelsea and opposing them, not because they're not playing well, just because of the fixture.
Mark, when I talked about a low goal expectancy, that was just, it wasn't numbers based, that's for sure. It's sort of purely anecdotal in my mind how I visualise going away to Burnley under the lights. But what do the numbers say about this game, both in terms of goals perhaps? Is that a potential angle, or in terms of the match prices?
Well, I'm in complete agreement with Adrian here, which is really good to hear, because I do think this is a potential banana skin for Chelsea. But a lot of respect for what Frank Lampard's done in his first 3 months. I think he's made Chelsea competitive and entertaining in a short space of time. Had a difficult start, but certainly the performances recently have improved week on week. Defensively, they've improved week on week as well, which should be said. But I think they've been gubbed a bit by the schedulers here, because whilst Amsterdam's only an hour away from London, playing Ajax away on Wednesday night, as Adrian says, is energy sapping. It cuts into their preparation time, their rest time, recuperation. And a trip to Burnley at the best of times is never easy. Pep Guardiola sort of labelled it as compared it to visiting the dentist last season. He's not wrong really, because they're going to make it difficult for you, especially Saturday night under the lights. Fans have been on the beers a few hours. They're going to be up for it. So Chelsea, from a team news perspective, it's also quite interesting if Kante is fit or not. Christensen and Rudiger missed out again in midweek. So you're looking at a partnership of potentially Zuma and Tomori. I love Tomori to bits, but Zuma, accident waiting to happen at the moment. And then the midfield of potentially Jorginho, Mount and Kovacic. Not a huge amount of protection there. And their away record in the Premier League in 2019 conceded 28 goals in 13 games, which kind of highlights those frailties. I've got no issues with them going forward. So kind of backing up what you're saying, Ali, about the goals. I do expect Chelsea to score. They're second only to Man City in terms of expected goals, XG open play, all the attacking metrics really. Streets ahead of the rest, actually, well ahead of Liverpool too. So got no issue with them going forward. It's defensively. And just from a fatigue side of things, conditioning, I think it's a tough ask to go to Turf Moor so soon after being in Ajax. And I think odds on quotes, you think you need to stay away. Burnley plus a half-goal starter. 2.1 or bigger is a fair bet to me.
Okay, so let me just recap the 4 games that we've previewed in terms of our selections. In Liverpool Spurs, I think we were leaning towards Liverpool and goals in that game, maybe bunching those things up there. In the Arsenal Palace game, I think we envisage it being quite tight, fairly low scoring, and potentially getting with Palace on the handicap, or a very narrow Arsenal win. We can't back Man United at their price at Carrow Road, so we're looking at Norwich on the handicap there. And similar story really with Chelsea at odds against up at Turf Moor. We're opposing them, and Burnley on the handicap. We've got a new section here. I'm going to offer you a £10 risk-free bet, which means money back if it loses, but you have to choose an outsider, a long shot, I suppose, an underdog. So with this mythical £10 risk-free bet, Adrian, what would you be going for this weekend?
Oh, it's mythical. I was getting excited there. I thought you were going to get actual cash out, but it's okay. It's fine. I'm going to delve into the Championship. Look, the Championship is notoriously difficult to bet on. We know that. I was at Forest Hull last night. Forest overwhelming favourites, beaten 2-1. So you never can tell. But the upset I envisage is at the Hawthorns. West Bromwich Albion at home to Charlton Athletic. Now, West Brom, brilliant going forward, aren't they? They keep scoring goals for fun. But I'm not convinced about the centre-half duo, or the back four in general, to be perfectly honest. They have leaked 2 goals in 4 of their 6 home games, West Bromwich Albion. But they keep getting away with it. If they do that against Charlton, they won't get away with it. They're the best team in terms of league position they would have faced at the Hawthorns this season. They've mainly faced teams that are in the lower half. So I'm going to go with Charlton here, who have put up some good performances against the better teams in the Championship. Last time I looked, it was around about 6-1 on Charlton to beat West Bromwich Albion. I just think this might be the day where Bilic's boys get their comeuppance, and if they fall behind, I don't think they'll come back from it.
Yeah, as we record on the Matchbook site, 7.8, so closer to 7-1 there. That's where you're going for your long shot. I mean, it's mythical for you, Adrian, because you already have a Matchbook account, and so do I. But it's not mythical for those who don't. So actually, the £10 risk-free bet is available to new customers. It's not mythical for them. And if your first bet on the Matchbook site loses, they will refund your stake up to a maximum of £10. Bets must be placed within 7 days of sign-up, and Acca bets do not qualify for this promotion. You, of course, have to be over 18 to get this and to sign up to the Matchbook site, and you can go to offer.matchbook.com for all the information. So there you go. That's why it's mythical for us, but not for many of the listeners. Mark, what's your outsider this weekend?
Well, I had Bologna last weekend away at Juventus at 11-1. Lost that match, but could and should really have picked up at least a point. So I'm going to stay in Italy. Torino take on Cagliari. Cagliari just shy of 4-1, I think, to win that match. Raja Nangolan's Cagliari this season, sitting in 5th place at the moment after 8 games, which is unbelievable, really. Unbeaten in 6, won the last 4. They've already won away at Napoli and held Roma in the capital as well. For a team that's kind of been dubbed terrible travellers, they've really come to the party this season. and Torino just aren't in great shape, and I think they're very vulnerable. They're odds on to win this match. I don't think they should be. They've lost 4 of the last 6, failed to score in 3 of those. Only Brescia are creating fewer open play chances this season, and they've kept just the 1 clean sheet so far as well. Obviously had to start their season pretty early for the Europa League qualifiers. No joy there, and I think that kind of malaise has started to creep into their season as well. Mazzari's under pressure, and I think Cagliari will sense a bit of frustration and vulnerability there, and I think they're well capable of getting a result.
Okay, Charlton and Cagliari we like for our long shots this weekend. Again, a reminder to anyone listening or watching that doesn't have a Matchbook account, you can get a £10 risk-free bet and head to offer.matchbook for more terms and conditions there. Any other business, guys? This could be from across Europe, from the EFL, anything else that's caught your eye? Starting with you, Mark.
Okay, I'm going to mention a team that you saw actually on Wednesday night, Ali. Fleetwood Town. They're hosting MK Dons on Saturday. I do fancy Fleetwood to win this match reasonably comfortably. Obviously, quite a tough game at Coventry on Wednesday night. Not ideal when you've got to play on a Saturday again, but they're normally very consistent operators at Highbury. Under Joey Barton, 5 wins from 7 already this season. They're actually generating one of the Football League's highest XG figures from open play and sort of from set pieces as well. Their underlying metrics are very, very strong. They've got a full squad available, some terrific individuals. I know Joey Barton was very frustrated with the defeat on Wednesday. Lost a lead in that match, sort of passed up plenty of chances, but they do score goals, scored at least 9 times already this season. And they're coming up against the Dons team, who are rapidly plummeting down the division, alarmingly so. Paul Tisdale's talked about wanting to take his team away and have a complete reset on their season because they've taken 1 point from their last 7, failed to score in 6 of those, 9 defeats since promotion, 5 defeats from 6 away from home. Absolutely dreadful when they played Coventry last weekend at home, and then comfortably second best against a bang average Rochdale team in midweek as well. Real alarm bells there around Dons, and I think Fleetwood will put them away quite comfortably.
Yeah, absolutely. And despite defeat at Coventry last night, it was a really impressive first half performance for Fleetwood. They did really drop off in the face of a bit of a bombardment from Coventry. So you'd expect that MK Dons won't offer a similar threat, and that certainly seems like a good one to me. Adrian, what about you? What's tickling your fancy this weekend?
Well, it's good news. The Matchbook has gone down the Acca route because I've got a treble for you. So, and it's a lower league treble from the National League up to League One. So here we go. It's Harrogate first up to beat Aldershot at home. Harrogate are one of the form teams in the National League at the moment. They beat Yeovil away in their last fixture, and across their last 4 home games, they haven't let in a single goal. Aldershot aren't good travellers, 3 without a win on the road. So I strongly fancy Harrogate to beat them. In League 2, my pick would be Port Vale to beat Oldham at home. Vale are unbeaten at home. They've beat some good teams as well at Vale Park. Drew frustratingly last weekend against Stevenage. They can put that right against a really catchy Oldham team that are sort of inconsistent. They beat Walsall, I know, in midweek, but whenever they've won this season, they've then followed it with a defeat. So that's my logic there. So Port Vale and Harrogate. And to make up the trio, would you believe it, is Fleetwood. So completely in agreement. I've done the same homework as Mark on Fleetwood. MK, the only points MK have got on the road this season were at Southend. And everybody gets points at Southend at the moment. So yeah, Fleetwood, Port Vale and Harrogate.
So from everything we've spoken about today, gents, it's time to hear about your best bet. I'm going to give you 10 to 15 seconds on this one, but I want to hear where you would put everything if you had to this weekend, starting with you, Adrian.
I'm all in on Crawley versus Swindon. Both teams to score 2 of the most attack-minded sides in League 2. It happened in 12 of 15 games for Crawley. That's 80%. For Swindon, it's happened in 5 of 7 away games. So look, I'm going with Crawley and Swindon both score. I don't know who's going to win. I think they'll both score.
I think Crawley have taken the most shots in the whole of the EFL this season, which is slightly surprising. Certainly go for quantity, not quality. Mark, what's your best bet this weekend?
Yeah, it's Fleetwood to beat MK Dons at Highbury. Obviously, a little bit concerned about Wednesday night, the travel and the fatigue, and obviously losing that lead at Coventry. But at Highbury, they tend to get the job done pretty convincingly. And I really worry about this MK Dons team. I think they're heading one way at the moment. And unless Tisdale gets his wishes and gets a chance to completely rip up that team and start again, because they are treading downwards big time.
Okay, BTTS in Crawley, Swindon, and a Fleetwood home win against MK Dons. That's your lot for the Matchbook Weekend Football Podcast. We went through 4 games in the Premier League and then found some value elsewhere on the continent and in the EFL. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, if that's the route you went down. And we'll talk again next week.